Here is our cute little project we're going to do. First thing is open up and put everything spread out on a table, and grab your board, grab a hammer, a screwdriver, keys, whatever you can, and just beat your board up, make some scratches. This will help the dark and decrepit fill in the holes and be distressed looking. So grab that out and get it ready. The DIY Dark and Decrepit is a liquid patina that is like a walnut color and can be used as a stain that is way easier to clean up, non-toxic, and it looks really good. You can dilute it with a clear liquid patina if you want a lighter color, or you can let it dry and put a second coat on and make a darker stain. I only gave you enough to use for the base coat. Don't worry about full coverage, but do your edges first, and you can stick this on 2 tuna cans so that it's not hitting your table when you try to paint and things, but whatever works. Don't try to cover the front and the back. We're only doing the side we distressed. And after we get this product covered on this, then we will take a paper towel or a washcloth that is dry and wipe it back just like you would normally a stain. You wipe the excess off, and we will let that dry to the touch, or you can take a blow dryer and make that go quicker. You can set it in front of a fan if you want. It doesn't have to be perfectly dry, but go ahead and let it dry at least a little bit. Most of the DIY products work really good with a water mister bottle. Here, because the Dark and Decrepit didn't get way down in the little distress that I did, I just spray it and it will help move the product into those places better. And I'm just wiping it back, wiping my edges back, and then we're going to move on to the next step. All right, take your paintbrush and rinse it out or leave it in water. The patinas, you have to make sure you wash your brush out and don't let it dry overnight or anything. The DIY paint, you can actually let it dry in your brush overnight, re-wet it, and it still works. So rinse that brush out. We're going to use it again for our gravel road paint. So get that ready and do your edges, and we're going to let that dry. Again, you can let it dry on its own. It dries really fast, or you can use a dryer or a fan, and we're going to put 2 coats of this on. So here goes the first coat. It doesn't have to cover perfect. Just get your scratch coat on. We are doing a distressed look. And on the second coat, what we'll do is take your mister bottle or either dip your brush in water and then put it in your gray paint, and it will move the paint further along. So 2 coats. It doesn't take long. It's super fun. I love this paint. It's really versatile. After you get your second coat on your edges and on the front side, then just dry to the touch, and you're ready for the next step. All right, it is ready to wet distress. So take a Lysol wipe, a baby wipe, a wet wash rag, whatever you want to use, and you literally just rub back the paint until you get it to the look you want. All right, once you get your wet distressing the way you'll like it, let it dry for a bit, and then get your big top clear liquid patina, and we will put a coat over that. The liquid patinas seal the DIY paint, or wax does, but since we're using the Iron Orchid transfers, we need to seal it with the big top because you cannot put those over wax. So put that on, it dries really quick as well, just to let it dry on its own to the touch, or use a fan or the blow dryer for this step as well. And then we can move on to the transfers. I pre-made the molds and sent them to you with air dry clay. You can use the Iron Orchid molds as a sugar art medium to do for baking, or you can use them for these crafts. They suggest having 2 sets if you do that. I used the Iron Orchid clay and I cornstarched the mold first so it helps it release the casting, and then you just smash it in, and there is a micro ridge that helps you know you got the back flat, and then you just roll it over and peel it out like that. These are so fun and there are so many designs, but I couldn't send you one in the kit, so I just sent them pre-made. You can also use a resin pour with them. Now that your Big Top has thoroughly dried, either by a blow dryer or letting it air dry for at least 30 minutes, take your first transfer and peel the back off. Be sure and not touch the back of the image with your finger, because that will make oil and it won't stick as good. You lay it down, you can kind of hoover over and see where you want it, and then you put it down, and then you take your popsicle stick and you just carefully run over it like I'm doing here, and you can kind of pick it up and look and make sure it's sticking, because sometimes you think, oh, it's not coming off, but it does. See how I'm peeking there? And then if you see a spot that's not quite off of there, you just lay it back down and just keep scratching it. I've even thrown the transfer sheet away with part of the leaf on, picked it back up, and you can see through to match it good enough that you can still get it on there. So after you get that all down, then you just take your fingers and run over the little flower or the image, and that's called burnishing. And then I take the transfer paper and do the same thing as well. You can also do this with the soft cloth. I just have better luck doing it with this. All right, we're ready for that second flower, and we're going to do the same thing. Just I'm taking the staple out of it, because you want to either cut the staple off or pull it out so that you don't scratch your paint job, which with distress it doesn't matter, but on a future project, know that go ahead and take the staple off of there. Or if you buy a full set of transfers, I usually tape them together when I cut them apart. So that's just a tip in case you like these and want to order more. Okay guys, I am new at making these videos for my craft kits, and I had a new tripod and it videoed everything sideways instead of straight on. I will get that figured out the next go around. So give me some grace here. And I've even thought about doing these on a live that you would just go find on Facebook, but not everybody does them on Facebook. So just stay posted, I'm learning. Okay, now here we go. I learned how to make these one-time use stencils on my Joy Cricut, and I love them a lot. So the key to this is we need to pull off the backing. There's going to be a top over our nest, and there's going to be a backing underneath. So we want the back to stick down to the wood. So peel that off carefully. Take your time doing that. And then this isn't as see-through as the transfer paper is, so you just kind of, you know, hoover over it a little bit and see if you got it, looks like lined out so it's not going cockeyed or anything. And you can let that go over your transfer. Mine did a little bit. So I'm lining that out, getting that organized, and then you just take your finger, and I'm kind of measuring with my popsicle stick here. You can't really see because it's videoed sideways, and then just you're going to push that down because you want that to stick on there. The better it sticks down, the less bleed through when we go to stencil the paint on there. I do sell the Iron Orchid letter sets that are stamps instead of stencils, but those are more expensive. I can't send a whole one out for a kit, so that's why I thought, well, we'll do a one-time use stencil. It's super fun. So I'm just really getting that down and pushing that really good. And so that it'll adhere. You can even take your finger and just trace it like it's a pencil over it to get it going. And then that paper that is white on the top, then we're going to peel that off, and you're going to need your popsicle stick for this, and you'll see what I'm doing as I get it going. Right here, you'll see I took that transfer paper and stuck it over the transfer because I didn't want to push too hard with the popsicle stick to get that stencil down because I didn't know for sure if it would pull it up or anything. So, don't go too crazy when it covers your stencil or your transfer a little bit. So what you're going to see here is we are going to pull that white paper backing off, and it's going to want to take some of the blue part that needs to stay on your board up with it. So just kind of take your time when we pull that off, and just if you see it's not sticking down, then just take your popsicle stick and use it, as you can kind of see, to put it down, and use your finger and just take some time. Just enjoy this process, and just really take your time pulling that off and leaving the stencil on the board. If something crazy would happen and some of your blue parts, like the middle of an O or something like that, sticks to your paper, no problem. You might have to take some tweezers or that pin that I stick in there to help weed. You'll see what I'm talking about later. After we see how it's doing right there, you can take your little pin or tweezers or something and just put it back on there. Just line it up and put it back on there. It will be fine. I've done a lot of these and it will work out. So here we go. See how I'm using that stencil. So let's just keep going. We're almost to the fun part. We're going to take our sponge out next, the little cut sponge, and we will pour our paint out onto a paper plate or even a plate, because this paint washes off great. It's the best paint ever. It'll even wash out your clothes. The patina's not so much, but the paint, yes. All right, I had said get a paper plate or something, but you can just use the shiny side of the back of the transfer paper. So that works really good. This doesn't look like it's going to be enough paint, but I tested it out. It is. DIY paint goes on and on. It can even be watered down and still have the color saturation. So just put it on the paper, and I want you to take your little dauber. Some kits will just have the sponge only in it. They both work, but I will send a dauber in this one. And you load your dauber and kind of unload it, because if it has too much paint on it, you'll push it up under the stencil and it'll look kind of bleedy and not as sharp of a line. So less is more when you're stenciling. That's really hard for me, but go ahead and just don't worry about getting perfect coverage your first go around. Just get it on there. Just get it on the letters. Again, enjoy this process. This is supposed to be a fun experience. So take your time. And I'm pointing out right there, see how the blue vinyl isn't covering my board? So go ahead and put you a piece of paper or some of the backing of the transfer paper, whatever you got, and just so that you don't stencil over on the part you don't want. And you can also use painter's tape right there if you want to make sure you're not getting it on the board that is not supposed to be covered. And you just get it all on there, covered once. By the time you get all of your letter done, it'll be almost dry to go back and do your second coat, which doesn't even have to be full coverage, because black, it gets it in one usually. Now on this one, you don't want to take your blow dryer on high heat. You can use a cool button or just be patient, let it dry, or stick it in front of a fan or whatever. It really doesn't take long, but you don't want to melt your vinyl. Ask me how I know. Anyway, so do your second coat and get ready. It's going to be so fun. I love peeling off that blue vinyl to get to the look. And you will need your paper clip that I sent for this. You can use a safety pin. You can use a sewing pin. You might want to go ahead and grab a pair of tweezers. Wouldn't hurt, but that will be our next part. All right, we got that second coat on. Now get that safety pin ready, or whatever you decided to use for the weeding part, and wipe your fingers off with a baby wipe or a dry paper towel, because you don't want to get paint onto your board where it wasn't supposed to be. So I kind of keep a paper towel to kind of wipe my hands, because I usually peel this off when it's semi-wet. You can wait till it's dry, but you don't have to. It's just a little bit more messy to work with, because you will pull the paint pieces off and get it on your fingers and get it on your board, which if you do, you can take a baby wipe and get it off. So no fear. So here I'm just peeled the big part off, and now I'm taking what you call weeding, and then you pull up those middle parts of your O, and you kind of have to really look it over good, because sometimes you'll miss some of the details and you'll see a little bump later and you're like, oh. So go ahead and really look it over under a lamp light or something after you think you got it all off, because I had missed some pieces even when I was filming, and I was like, oh. So it's easy to get off. It's super fun. It's really getting beautiful here, and you're going to have a fun, cute project. So just keep going, and the next step will be gluing on the pre-made molds that I sent you. Alrighty, so you can take a blow dryer and kind of make sure your paint is dry if it wasn't when you finished. And now we're going to take a toothpick that I sent you with the glue, and we're going to just take that mold and put that glue, and you really want to make sure you spread it out to the edges if you can. You can take a paintbrush if you have another paintbrush, just make sure and rinse it out really good and brush it. You can just get it completely on there, whatever you have to do. And then we're going to place them on the places that I put them, but feel free if you want to change it up and put it somewhere else, just kind of hover over it before you put the glue on the back and just make a decision. All right, now we are taking our paintbrush that we had rinsed out, and we are going to use that to put the big top once again, because we've already used that to pre-seal the board before we put the transfer on. Now we're using the same thing. We don't have to go over the entire board because we've got it done, but we need to seal the transfer. Normally, you can use even a wax to seal the transfers, but we are just using the big top in this one. And make sure your paint is dry before you do the step, or it could spread it out and blur it if it's not completely dry. And you'll see me using my little sponge thing to kind of stamp the big top on there so it doesn't do that, but you don't have to do this part right here. You can, if you just make sure it's dry and you're patient, more patient than me, then you can just brush that big top over your paint and your transfer because your board is already done. And all your finish will match then, and your project is done. And I hope you had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun creating this, even filming it sideways. Sorry about that. I'll get the next one better. And I plan to do these, and I will have them on my website. All the products that were used, you can buy the full-size versions of them in my links in the description box. And please share this with anybody else that you think would like it. If you want to follow me where the most action is, follow me on Facebook, Decorizing Your Life. That's all my socials, and I'm trying to post one regular short edited video once a week on this YouTube channel. Thanks so much. I sent the little hanger that you can just literally smash it in with your fingers. If you don't have the strength to do that, you can put it over and use a little hammer, but just be sure and pad your molding so that you don't break those doing it, and make sure that you have it not upside down. So I hope you had fun watching this, and let me know what you think in the comments. Here are some other kits that I offer on my website. If you want any, just look in the links and go to my website and you will be able to order them. 2 of these, the furniture in a box kit, I did not create. The camper kit, I did not create. And the little house kit, I did not create. This welcome size is available. So just check it out. Thanks.